Welcome to our Let's Talk Parkinson's online event brought to you by Parkinson's Community Los Angeles. Today we are going to be talking about how Parkinson's can impact speech and voice and how the program from Parkinson Voice Project, Speak Out, can help. I'm Julia Nichols, I'm a board member of PCLA, and for those of you who don't know us, we are a Los Angeles-based nonprofit that supports families living with Parkinson's disease through our free online education events, our support groups, all the information that we provide, and the referral program that we have, and lots of other good things. This series is brought to you by our Let's Talk Parkinson's sponsors, Abbott, AbbVie, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and Sanovian. All of PCLA's programs are also made possible by donations from you, our Parkinson's community. If you appreciate the work we do and the support we offer, we hope that you will consider making a donation at our website at www.pcla.org. Thank you very much. Just a few quick notes before we get started. We are recording today's event for our YouTube channel. If you do not want to be visible in the recording, please turn your video off and then we won't see you. Everyone will receive a link to view the recording after the event. If you can also please stay muted during the presentation so that we can keep all the background noise at a minimum. We will have time for questions at the end, and you can either submit them into the chat box. You will see on the bottom of your screen you have an option to open your chat box, and you can type those questions into the chat box at any time during the presentation. If typing is difficult for you, we will ask for spoken questions from the audience at the end. And please try and keep your questions on topic. If we have extra time, we can answer other questions too. So please join me in welcoming our speaker today. This is Gwen Nolan. She is the Clinical Outreach Coordinator at Parkinson Voice Project. She joined Parkinson Voice Project in June of 2020 after practicing as a speech-language pathologist, specializing in the evaluation and treatment of adult neurogenic speech, language, voice, cognitive communication, and swallowing disorders in many different settings: acute, rehabilitation, outpatient, skilled nursing, long-term care, home health, and at a university as a clinical supervisor for more than 15 years. Most recently, Gwen was an assistant clinical professor at the University of Missouri, where she trained graduate students to work with adults, developed specialized adult clinical programming, and successfully implemented Speak Out and the Loud Crowd. In her free time, Gwen enjoys exploring Dallas with her husband and her dog, spending time outside, and cooking. So please join me in welcoming Gwen today. Thank you, Gwen, for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. LA is one of my favorite places in the world. I would have loved to have come and to present this in person, but I'm here in Dallas, Texas, sort of at the world headquarters for Parkinson Voice Project. I am a practicing speech-language pathologist. I continue to work with people who have Parkinson's and related disorders, but I also am the clinical outreach coordinator here. So it's a fancy title for someone who sort of oversees our grant program, and I don't know if you can see it. The PowerPoint is up, but over my shoulder is a 3-panel map about 4 by 8 feet. And so it's kind of how I keep up knowing where our grant recipients are in the world. And so it's really exciting. It helps us to expand our program and help more people with Parkinson's recover stronger voices, clearer speech, and hopefully safer swallowing. So today I'm going to talk about preserving speech and voice in Parkinson's disease. When people think about Parkinson's, Speech and voice often isn't the first thing that comes into their mind, but we'll talk about why it should be as we get a little bit deeper into the presentation. Next slide. So a little bit about Parkinson Voice Project. We are the only nonprofit speech therapy clinic dedicated to preserving the speech and voices of people with Parkinson's. We were founded in 2005 by Samantha Ellenderry, who was an absolute and is an absolute visionary. She saw a need, a gap in services, and she found a way to meet that need. We also wouldn't exist and wouldn't have come to being without the assistance of generous patients and donors who believed in our mission and helped us to get off the ground. At Parkinson Voice Project, no patients and no payer sources, no insurance, no Medicare, have been billed for services since 2008. So the people that we see in our clinic aren't required to pay anything. We will care for them no matter what, and we will care for them for the rest of their lives. We do require funding, though, and what we do is we operate under a pay-it-forward model. All of our patients will receive treatment, and then they're given the opportunity to pay it forward to help the next patient if they want to. And most people do, some people don't. I don't know who does and who doesn't. What matters to us is that people are being provided care. I can't believe I didn't put this in the PowerPoint, but we are located in Richardson, Texas. I think there's a slide about this. Go ahead and click next. But we're in Richardson, Texas. So I'll talk about that in a minute. First, I want to talk about our mission and vision. These are the things that really drive what we do. Our mission is to preserve the voices of individuals with Parkinson's and related neurological disorders through intensive speech therapy, follow-up support, research, education, and community awareness. And I'll be talking about how we do that in a moment. Our vision is to collaborate with other compassionate speech language pathologists to replicate Speak Out and the Loud Crowd therapy programs throughout the world. Part of my role here in working with grant recipients is to help do that. And it's part of the reason why the map is so important to me. There's a pin on the map for every clinic that has received a grant. So I know where in the world we are, but when I look at those pins, every one of them represents a speech language pathology clinic where there are trained speech therapists who can provide Speak Out and Loud Crowd. And I think about all of the people that helps, and that's what we're all about. We're about helping people with Parkinson's recover and maintain their voice and their speech. Next slide. So our clinic, we have a large outpatient clinic in Richardson, Texas, and it's dedicated just to treating people with Parkinson's disease-related speech and voice problems using our pay-it-forward model. Again, we don't bill anyone for therapy who comes here. Richardson is kind of a northern suburb of Dallas. So if you know where Dallas is, we're just a little bit north of that. Next slide. Our speech therapy program is called Speak Out and the Loud Crowd. It was developed by our founder and CEO, Samantha Ellenderry. Speak Out is the individual speech therapy component. Loud Crowd is the group speech therapy component. And they're really part of a more global program. So they go together like peanut butter and jelly. You need to do Speak Out so that you can learn what that's about, and then you go into the loud crowd. So we have a training course so that people can learn how to provide these services. And so we train speech language pathologists. They can go online and register for our course and take it. Our grant recipients generally are awarded some courses so that they can get their programs up and running. Grant recipients also are able to train speech language pathology graduate students at no cost. Our organization feels very, very strongly about teaching graduate students so that they know how to work with people who have PD. Many of us finished graduate school and went out into the world without a really good sense of how to help someone with Parkinson's. So this is a way for us to give back to our profession and help not just our grant recipients, but graduate students. Our grant program is robust. It continues to grow every year. Again, it trains speech language pathologists, it trains faculty members at universities, it trains graduate students, and more importantly, as importantly, it provides the therapy materials and supplies that they need so that they can use those with their loud crowd. It also, in the United States, will provide funding for grant recipients. So this year, we awarded 303 grants. I am a former grant recipient. I received 2 grants during my time at the University of Missouri. It's been amazing. It was a way to give back to the community, to train our students, to help people with Parkinson's. We also have research. We recently just pushed out another research study. This one is particularly exciting. If we're doing therapy, it's very, very important that we know that the therapy is effective. And we can measure it and we can look at it and we can see our patients improve. But we have to be able to prove that to our profession. We have to be able to prove that to movement disorder specialists. We have to be able to prove it to people with Parkinson's, because you want to be involved in a therapy program that you know will work. So the research arm is really important. We do not directly engage in research, but we collect data for research. And there's a long-term study that we just pushed out. It was just published in the summer, that proves that people who complete speak out therapy and who practice every day, attend loud crowd, they not only maintained strong voices and clear speech, they actually got a little bit better over time. And that's huge. We have advocates. It takes a village to run an organization, and we need volunteers. So we have Parkinson voice advocates. These are people who have all been through individual therapy. They're in loud crowds, and they volunteer their time to the tune of thousands of hours a year to help us. They make phone calls thanking people who donate. They call our grant recipients to offer assistance, to thank them for applying and helping people with Parkinson's in their communities. They take flyers around the city. So there are many, many things. They'll help us even at events. So there are many things that they do, but we couldn't exist without them, and we love them. We also sing. So we have a singing group, the Intentional Singers. We were so excited to welcome them back earlier this fall. We have space here where we can keep everybody distanced. They can wear masks, but our intentional singers are absolutely remarkable. They also are all people who have Parkinson's, who have been, they've completed Speak Out therapy. They are Loud Crowd members, but they come in and they sing, they perform, and they're absolutely amazing. This past year, because of COVID, normally our intentional singers perform. Well, with COVID, there was just no way for that to happen. So last year, we started a virtual choir. We opened it to not just our intentional singers and people here in Richardson. We reached out to participants all over the country and around the world. So last year was our very first virtual choir performance. This year, we've doubled the number of people that we have singing. There are over 400 people with Parkinson's, families and friends, speech language pathologists, and students who will be a part of this year's virtual choir performance. And I don't want to give anything away, but this year's song was Sweet Caroline, and everybody knows that, right? So I'll show you later how you can go on our website and register if you'd like to watch the choir. It's absolutely amazing. We'll be singing more than just Sweet Caroline, but there's really something quite magical when the audio video gentleman puts all of those voices together to make one voice. It is amazing. It never ever gets old for me. We also do outreach. So as a response to the pandemic, Samantha started to do daily practice sessions on Facebook. And they were so popular and so many people started to watch them that we really kind of put it together in a more organized way. Day on our website, they're called the Speak Out Parkinson's Speech Exercises. Presentation, and you think, you can go to our website, you can click a button, and you can watch. Now it's 10 a.m. US Central. I'm not very good with time zones, but I think that's 8 o'clock in the morning for you all. We do have people who watch at that hour, but that may not be good timing for you. So they're also recorded 24/7. There are pages and pages of them. You can scroll further down the page, and there are short practice sessions, and they're from speech pathologists all over the world. So I have one there, Samantha does, another of our speech pathologists, and then we have people from Australia, from other parts of the US. So they're really fun, and you can learn about things. There's one on there from Australia. She did it in, I guess what would be the equivalent of a campground there, but they have way cuter wild animals than we do, or at least I think so. And I had to watch it 3 times before I realized she was talking, because over her shoulder, you can see these kangaroos. There's maybe 15 of them, and they're hopping around doing what kangaroos do. And there was a Joey, and he jumped into his mother's pouch. It's adorable, but you can practice with her, and it's really fun. We can help people now who haven't had Speak Out therapy to find a provider, and to help those who have been through therapy maintain strong voices and clear speech. And these online exercises are a great way to do that. Our response to COVID is really more than just doing the daily online exercises. We also realized that we developed our course for face-to-face therapy. We had to very, very quickly adapt, speak out in the loud crowd protocols so that we could provide teletherapy in response to COVID. And when we did, we found the most miraculous thing. We will have people who aren't able to make it in for sessions. Maybe their ride fell through, they're not feeling well that day, a myriad of reasons. Once we transitioned to online, our own patients were able to attend more easily. But the other piece of it was we could reach people in rural areas who had nothing more than a smartphone, and we could do therapy with them where before they would have never been able to make it into our clinic. So, you can think about COVID as a black cloud, and it certainly has been. But one of the silver linings was our profession as a whole quickly adapting and our organization really stepping into action and adapting protocols, pushing out information to people who are providing services and reaching out to our patients. So, excuse me. So some Parkinson's statistics. It is the second most common degenerative disorder after Alzheimer's. There are 1 million people in the US living with PD. Approximately 60,000 Americans are diagnosed each year. And I recently read 1 person every 9 minutes is diagnosed, and I thought that was frightening. I mean, you think about that over the course of this presentation, 5, 6 more people will be diagnosed. More than 10 million people worldwide are living with Parkinson's, and it really drives home the importance of having an international piece to our organization. The online sessions can be viewed from anywhere in the world, and in fact are. We have hundreds and hundreds of people who watch live every day, thousands who watch the recordings. So we're reaching people from all over the world. And that's so important. Fewer than 5% of people are diagnosed before the age of 50, and that young onset, while not a huge percentage of the people diagnosed, is devastating. Every diagnosis is devastating. When we look at PD speech and voice, we know that there's a lot of rigidity and stiffness, very slow movements, resting tremor. In terms of speech, it causes something called hypokinetic dysarthria. So people become quieter. There's loudness decay, so softer as a sentence progresses. Not as much music in their voices. Reduced articulatory precision. So when you think about it, everything becomes smaller with Parkinson's. And when your mouth isn't opening as much, your tongue can't move around to make all of the sounds in speech. Abnormal rate, so increased pauses, slower or faster, and vocal tremor and hoarseness. There are other critical factors in terms of the dysarthria. So the sensory processing means that people with Parkinson's are often not aware that they are quieter, that they aren't intelligible to other people. That kind of internal cueing that was always automatic. You would walk into a noisy party and automatically increase the volume of your speech. That tends to not happen with people who have Parkinson's. There's general decreased effort. So movements are what we would call underscaled. So they're much smaller. But there's also a motivational component to it. The lack of dopamine causes a reduction in sort of that internal getty up and go, that motivation to get up off the sofa and do things. Because Parkinson's and that lack of dopamine is saying, sit down, take a rest. You don't have to get up and do anything. But there are also impaired automatic motor sequences. So things that you could always take for granted, like easily counting and not tripping over the numbers, that also becomes more difficult. So in terms of the numbers, 90% of people with Parkinson's are likely to develop speech disorders. And I want you to think about that. That's 9 in 10 people. Aspiration pneumonia is reported as the most common cause of death. So something that you eat or drink goes down the wrong pipe and bacteria builds up and you develop a particularly virulent type of pneumonia. And it accounts for as much as 70% of the mortality rate. Early signs of a speech disorder, reduced volume. It may be very subtle, but it's still there. A hoarse sounding voice, frequent throat clearing, trailing off at the end of sentences, inconsistent production of the voice. You'll also see kind of a mask-like appearance. The facial muscles also can become stiff. People always think of it just in terms of, hand tremors or walking, but it affects all of the muscles, even those above the neck. Production of speech is a very automatic behavior, and it's really impacted in people with PD due to a lack of dopamine. Parkinson Voice Project speech therapy program, Speak Out in the Loud Crowd, teaches people with Parkinson's how to convert speech from an automatic function that's very dopamine dependent to an intentional act, which is much less dopamine dependent. In other words, speaking with intent uses a system that is less dependent on dopamine and one that people with Parkinson's can control. So when you think about using intent, if you're out just kind of ambling around, you may not really be thinking about walking, but think about what it's like when you're not quite sure where you're going. You're thinking about that. Or if you're walking on an unsteady surface, you're really focused on that walking. Writing with intent, trying to think of what you want to say. You want your handwriting to be really neat because this friend is really picky about that. So you write with intent. You can also speak with intent. It's about being focused and concentrating and being very deliberate and purposeful. So I have a little video for you. It's not very long, but it does a great job of showing you the difference between automatic and intentional speech. So you'll see people before and after.
We don't have any audio. I'm still not hearing anything. Sorry. May need to share computer sound. No.
No sound.
Oh, I am so sad about that. All right, go ahead and let this run anyway, because I can sort of talk people through it. So with the next gentleman, I want you to kind of watch Look at how he is struggling to, and he was asked to count from 1 to 15. And so he's really having a lot of trouble with that. He's kind of leaning forward. You can see the effort. Here he is finishing after treatment, much more comfortable. Yeah, I'm not sure why you're not getting the audio. And I'm so sad. Sometimes with Zoom, I don't know if you have to click an audio button on Zoom.
Let me stop sharing for a moment and see if I can figure that out.
Okay, I can move back through the presentation too. It's really powerful because one of the things that we encourage people who do speak out therapy to do is to take a video of people at the very beginning of treatment and then take a video at the end so that people can get a sense of the difference between how they look and sound at the beginning, because people will very often be bent forward and their facial expressions are very flat. They're not moving their mouths. But afterwards, they're thinking about it. And so they're looking at us. They're smiling. Their mouths are moving. And there's kind of more of that musical quality in their voices. Do you want to just go back to the PowerPoint? I could answer some questions if there are any for the first part.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is Steve from Orange County, California.
Mm-hmm.
I am fairly recently, just within the last 6 months, diagnosed with Parkinson's. And I have a couple of those. My voice tends to sound hoarse. Sometimes it gets a little lower, but I don't really have the problems that you've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is this kind of therapy something I should be waiting to get into until I have those problems?
Oh no, and I could not be happier that you asked this question. So a lot of times people think, well, but I just got diagnosed recently. People, almost never ask me to repeat. I don't, my voice is a little hoarse, but I don't really notice a big problem with it. The very best time to get into therapy is right now. Because if you wait until your speech significantly deteriorates, it is much, much harder to overcome. I have people who maybe were diagnosed 10 years ago, so a pretty long time. And in general, I find that people who were diagnosed a long time ago and didn't seek speech therapy until now, we can get to the point where they can say single words, even 5 words. There are people who can actually read paragraphs, but they have to have somebody constantly prompting them to use intent. If you were to go into therapy now, you would be able to move through the lessons and learn how to speak with purpose, to take control of your speech, to do it now, and to get into a habit of practicing every day before you actually get significantly worse. We have people who got into therapy early in the course of their disease. They've had Parkinson's for, 5, 7, 8 years, and you wouldn't know it by their speech because they've kind of habituated intent. It's a part of how they think now. And before they open their mouths, they're thinking, I need to say this with purpose.
I have two other quick questions.
Uh-huh.
The first is, in order to practice this, to make it a regular thing, how much time do you need to spend practicing every day?
Stay tuned. I am going to talk about that. I am going to talk about that, but really it's about 8 to 10 minutes or
Oh, that's
10, maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day at the most, because you will have learned the exercises. And in fact, the real caution is to do them with intent, because once you learn something, it's like when you first learn to drive a car, you're like, your hands are at 10 and 2 and you're really focused on the road. And now you're like, you got one finger on the wheel and you're looking out the window this way and you're not thinking about it quite as much. And that's how this is. So you only need to practice 10 or 15 minutes a day, but that practice does need to be intentional. It's just like when you're doing any other exercises. You want that practice to be deliberate. It's how you get strong and stay strong.
okay. Last question is, given that we're all mostly here in Southern California, will you be letting us know how we can sign up for teletherapy with you guys?
I'm so excited you asked that question. So you are so lucky to be where you are, because there are a lot of providers in your area. Because of the way licensing laws work, we are only allowed to see people who are in Texas, and we are in Texas. So for us, it makes it difficult, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to get the online sessions out there, because you can practice with Samantha every day if you want, and I hope you will. Matter of fact, I hope tomorrow morning you wake up and you say to yourself, I'm doing it. And so Chapman County is in Orange County. I should know where all of the grant recipients are, and I do, but I mean, we can look it up. I'm going to show you some slides at the end so that you know how to find a provider.
Terrific. Thank you.
Absolutely. But you can email me too. And I'll have information on that at the end.
Wonderful.
So our speech therapy program, any exercise program, any doctor visit, any medical anything, should always start with an evaluation, and we do one too. There's a stimulability piece to it so that we can make sure that you're actually able to speak with intent. And I can't even think of a single person that I've ever evaluated that couldn't. We have a Parkinson information session, and it's actually, now it's a webinar, so you can sign up for it. Samantha does them once a month. They last just about an hour, but it's a fantastic place to ask questions about speech therapy and speak out in particular. It's infused with information about what actually happens in the brains of people with Parkinson's to cause those speech deficits. So it's absolutely fabulous. I encourage you, your family, your care partners, your friends to watch one of these and ask questions if you have them. So Speak Out is an individual component. Most people go from Speak Out directly into a Loud Crowd. COVID has made that very hard. The online sessions have helped to bridge that gap a little bit, along with much closer follow-up. But 6 weeks after you finish individual treatment, your speech language pathologist should follow up with you, because we find that 6 weeks is just about the time if people are the honeymoon phase is over, and if people are gonna fall off the practice wagon, that's roughly when it happens. So those follow-ups are really important. But you wanna make sure after therapy that you're practicing once a day, that you attend the Loud Crowd or singing groups, or you're practicing religiously online at least once a week. And I have my patients do it as many days a week as they can. And then do speak out refreshers. Those are just quick follow-up evaluations. Typically, we would do those every 6 months, but because of COVID and because we haven't been able to bring our patients in, we're just seeing them online. I see most of my patients between 2 and 4 months. And it's just a very quick reeval to make sure they're doing okay. So for Speak Out, you attend an online Parkinson webinar and information session, preferably with family care partners. The therapy itself probably seems underwhelming at this point. It's 8 to 12 sessions. They last about 40 minutes, and most people do them 2 or 3 days a week. Here we're doing them twice a week for 4 weeks. Sometimes I'll extend it out to 10 or 12 weeks if my patients need it, sometimes longer if my patients need it. But your speech language pathologist will work with you as long as you need to meet those goals. You'll exercise once every day using a Speak Out workbook. We send those to you. So after you're evaluated, and you'll see the number in the slides at the end, you'll call us with the name of the speech language pathologist who will be seeing you. And we'll just collect information. We need your mailing address so that we can send you your workbook. There's no cost to it. Again, we do offer these as a pay it forward. So if you want to make a donation, you can. If you don't, we don't require it. Part of our mission is to make sure that everyone has a workbook in the United States. So that's the reason why we send these, and we will not charge you for that. You'll need that to do your therapy. So you'll do 1 lesson a day in the Speak Out workbook, 1 lesson a day with the Speak Out Parkinson's speech exercises. One of the reasons that I think we're getting away with a shorter treatment schedule is because this is the way that we are having our patients practice. Those online practice sessions help you, especially in the early part of therapy, to really learn how to do the exercises, understand why you're doing them that way. Practice with Samantha, who has been doing these forever. And she infuses them with educational pieces that will be very, very helpful for you. There are weekly generalization tasks, not hugely time consuming. It might be call and leave your speech language pathologist a message with intent. Say hello to 3 people with intent. Speak with intent at all times is something we do want you to do. Success after Speak Out. Steve had asked this question. So 10 to 15 minutes of exercise every day. Participate in the online exercises. Every time you speak, speak with intent, and follow up with your speech pathologist. The Loud Crowd Maintenance Program, it's facilitated by a speech pathologist. You do the same 6 exercises every week, but you're doing them with a group of your peers. Other people who have Parkinson's. I know what it's like to live with a chronic disease because I have one, but it isn't Parkinson's. And the people that you see in Loud Crowd are people who are having the same issues day to day that you're having. So it's really great. It provides accountability and motivation to do the Speak Out exercises regularly, and they're fun. I'm going to move through this slide because I want to make sure that we get to the practice piece, but you all will have access to this PowerPoint, so you'll be able to read it afterwards. Just know that the long-term goal is to help Loud Crowd members maintain their speech and swallowing forever. That's something you can read later. All right, so I talked about the 6 exercises. I really wanted to have a chance to show you what these are all about. This exercise is designed to warm up all of the motor speech subsystems. So I'm going to show you how it goes, and then you can practice at home. Do not turn your sound on or you will have a deafening feedback loop. You ready? Here we go. So here's how it sounds, and then you do it after me. May, me, my, mo, moo. Now you do it. Project those voices. Lift them up over your computer, over my head, to happy on the wall behind me. Ready? I'll do it with you. May, me, my, mo, moo. Good job. You will practice those 5 times. All right, next slide. This is everyone's favorite exercise because everyone thinks it's easy. It's not the hardest exercise, but it is important because it's warming up your vocal folds, taking those nice deep breaths. You're projecting that sound forward up over your computers, and it should sound like this. So we're going to try and hold this for 10 seconds. If you can't make it, that's okay. If you have any water, go ahead and take a sip. All right, so here we go, 10 seconds. Lift that voice forward up over your computer, over my head to happy on the wall behind me. Here we go. Did you make it? If you didn't, that's okay. You practice, you will be able to make it. You want to make sure that mouth is wide open. It's how the sound gets out. This is the exercise that's hardest for most people, but it's one of the most important because it adds that music back in your speech. It works those little muscles that lengthen and shorten your vocal folds. It sounds like this. We're going to say, ah, I'm going to glide it up. I'm going to stop at the top and then glide it down. Watch me. Ah. Now I'm going to glide back down to home. Ah. So we want it nice and smooth. You don't have to go up as high as I do. You don't have to try and match my pitch, but I do want you to project that voice forward with intent. Here we go. Ah. Back down. Ah. All right, next exercise. All right, normally we would count all the way through each line, and just like with the May, Me, My, Mo, Moos, it's smooth and connected. You're projecting your voice forward. We're getting ready for some reading. It's going to sound like this. We're going to do the first line. 1, 2, 3. Say every sound and every number. Let's do it together. Project that voice forward and speak out. 1, 2, 3. Good. It gets a lot harder during therapy. Okay. Exercise 5 is the reading. It's a great way to prime yourself for speech without having a really heavy cognitive load because you're not having to think about what to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the very last sentence on here. I want you to speak out, project that voice up and over your computer, over my head, all the way to happy on the wall behind me. Every sound and every word with intent. It's going to sound like this. I am speaking with intent. Let's do it together. I am speaking with intent. Good. So this last exercise, you're going to pick a category and we'll do fruits. With intent, I want you to tell me at least 5 fruits, every fruit with intent. So it'll sound like this: banana, strawberry, apple, orange, kiwi. You try it. It's hard, right? You probably know a million fruits. I put you on the spot. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, let's go past this one. It just goes over the speech therapy program again. So for additional information, you want to visit parkinsonvoiceproject.org. And this is an image of kind of the upper part of our homepage. Next slide. So I told you about the Parkinson speech exercises. If you click that box, that will take you directly to the recordings and the live sessions. The monthly Parkinson webinar is in that green box. You just click the box, it'll take you to a screen to register, and then we'll send you reminders as it gets closer to when the webinar is. The Parkinson lecture series is amazing. We have Parkinson's experts from all over the place: movement disorder specialists, dietitians, speech language pathologists, physical therapists. And these lectures are just amazing. So I really encourage you to click that box, visit that page, and watch lectures. They're like podcasts, and you can watch them whenever you want. They're all on demand. If you want to find a provider, you can click the Find a Provider in your area box, enter a zip code, and specify a distance. You are incredibly blessed where you are, because you have fantastic providers that are very, very close to you, that I will do in person, and they'll do teletherapy. The Parkinson's virtual choir, please register and RSVP to watch. We would love to see you there. There's always information to learn. This virtual choir is truly amazing. And it's not a full-length feature film. Don't be worried about that. It's actually fairly short, maybe a 20-minute time commitment. It's 7 o'clock Central Time, so 5 o'clock your time. So while you're having your dinner, if you eat an early, you could go to have an early dinner, and you can watch this while you're eating. To contact us, you can visit parkinsonvoiceproject.org. You can email contact@parkinsonvoiceproject.org. And if you have questions for me, feel free to email contact. They'll just tell them, I have a question for Gwen, and they'll go ahead and forward that to me, and I'll respond. You can also call our toll-free number. And that's, yeah, you don't have to go back. So like I said, you all will have access to this PowerPoint, and your Speak Out provider can give you this information too. All right, questions.
I'm going to take a quick moment to first of all thank you, Gwen, for that wonderful presentation. And we do have a few minutes for anyone who would like to ask a question. If you would like to, please unmute yourself, say your first name so we can see you, and then ask your question, or you can still write in the chat box if you have a question.
Hi, this is Steve again from Orange County.
Hi.
Hi, just one other question. I'm a member of Kaiser. Do you know if you have any participants in Kaiser?
I don't know that. Um, you might reach out if there is a university near you. Uh,
Chapman's not far from me.
yeah, I would reach out to them and just ask. Uh, some universities will bill insurance or Medicare. Um, you could also call, and I'm trying to think who you would call. Ah, Alan is a KP member.
Yes.
So I don't know if Alan,
Around chat.
yeah, because I do want you to be able to get more information.
Eve, this is Sarah from PCLA. I can do a little research to you and reach out. I'll have your email address from the registration, so I'll do that for you.
Yeah, it looks like Alan just put up a phone number that Steve can text also.
Great.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Do we have any other questions for Gwen? I'll just reinforce what Gwen said. We have a whole lot of providers in Southern California, and the universities frequently provide therapy at no cost, so you don't even have to worry about going through your health insurance.
Thank you for pointing that out. The university that I was at also did provide pro bono services. Our program was provided to people in our community at no cost. And there were people who still, wanted to go to one of the hospital centers. But I mean, Steve, if you're willing to work with a student, you might want to consider doing that.
Yeah, I would absolutely be willing to.
I thank you on behalf of clinical educators everywhere. I have never been more grateful than to the people that we saw at the University of Missouri. They were so willing to be open about what it's like to have Parkinson's, and they were at varying stages of diagnoses. And it's incredibly important for students to learn before they graduate and go out into the world. You don't want to see a student for the very first time who's never seen someone with Parkinson's after they've already started working. So it's incredible that that people will go to these clinics and help these students. They will help you just as much as you will help them to learn. So thank you.
All right, I think it is just about time for us to wrap up then. Again, thank you so much, Gwen, for joining us. Thank you, everyone,
thank you
for
so much
joining.
for having me.
It was wonderful. We will make sure that we send out not only the presentation, but links to the videos that are on the presentation so that you can see the transformation after Speak Out therapy. It really is quite something,
wonderful.
isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that some of those videos may be available on the website. So yeah, I think that will be really helpful. Steve will just be so amazed.
I'll be joining you in the morning.
I hope so.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank
Please
you
join
so
us in
much.
October. We will have a presentation coming up in October on the role of nutrition and DBS, or deep brain stimulation, in Parkinson's treatment. And we also will have a special 2-part series exploring mind-body wellness and mind-body fitness for Parkinson's disease. So please keep your eye out in your email for registration information for those events and programs. Again, we want to thank our sponsors who are sponsoring Let's Talk Parkinson's: Abbott, AbbVie, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Sanovian, and by all of you. By donating, you can join us in our mission to improve the lives of families in our community who are living with Parkinson's. PCLA is a non-profit. All donations are tax deductible. And if you enjoyed this Let's Talk Parkinson's, please consider donating to us at PCLA.org. Always reach out with us for any questions that you have. You can do that at info@pcla.org or by phone 310-880-3143. Thank you, everybody. We hope you stay well and stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. And thank you again, Gwen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, stay well.